There's a famous sentence that kids often use and parents detest. Some of you already guessed it. I am bored. I'm not going to ask you to raise your hand how many times you've heard that. I had some cures for that, but I'm not going to tell you about them. But you know what? Children are not the only one who feel boredom. Adults feel boredom too. Children are able to verbalize it better. They are able to articulate it better. But adults mask their boredom. They mask their boredom by moving from one exciting venture to the other. They mask their boredom by seeking one new and exciting endeavor after another. Like shopping for things you don't need and you'll never use. Yeah, men have their toys and women just shop. Sometimes boredom drives people to become busybodies and get into other people's lives where they shouldn't. But would you believe me when I tell you that in nearly 30 years of ministry, I have seen, and yes, I've experienced too, Christians who are being bored with their Christian life, who become spiritually bored. And Christians who are bored with their spiritual life express their boredom by moving from church to church. They express their boredom by running to seminars and conferences and new and exciting ministries. They express their boredom by running after this leader or that leader. They express their boredom by going after experts on the subject. They express their boredom by thinking that if they read the last book by a self-styled expert, that's going to help their marriage. It's going to bring up their children. It's going to cure their financial problems. It's going to cure all their ills. In fact, they're going to give them the self-confidence that they're looking for. I want you to listen to me very carefully. Books, preachers, teachers, seminars, conferences can be helpful at times, but they can never, ever permanently solve the problem of spiritual boredom. There is only one cure for spiritual boredom. What is it? Is to know how to love the Lord Jesus Christ. I know that some churches can bore you to tears. I know that there are churches that can bore you to tears by their dead rituals. I know there are churches that can bore you to tears by mumbo-jumbo philosophical preaching. I understand that. I've been in some of those. And now the big things in some churches is the entertainment. In fact, some churches running like a theater companies. They go from production to production. I read about the pastor who ran into one of his members in grocery store, and he looked at him and he said, "Now, Bob, haven't seen you in church lately." He said, "Yeah, we've been busy, and you know, and then it rained, and it rained, and it rained." And the preacher said, "Well, you know, it's always dry in the church." He said, "Yeah, that too." I actually used to have a friend in Sydney, Australia, who genuinely believed, who honestly believed, that the duller the worship experience, the more spiritual it is. I don't know where they get that crazy ideas. I really don't. I mean, if we are worshiping a dead hero, yes, but we are worshiping a resurrected, glorified, soon coming back Jesus Christ. And neither dullness on the one hand or entertainment on the other is honoring to the Lord. But here's the problem. I want you to listen to me. The problem is that trying to mask our spiritual boredom will stop you from dealing with your most desperate need and my most desperate need. What is that most desperate need? I'm going to tell you. Listen to me carefully. how to overcome permanently, how to relieve the problem of spiritual boredom, is the question that I'm going to be talking about in the next few weeks. This is probably the most, not one of, the most important series of messages I've ever preached in the last 15 and a half years in the life of this church. So I want you to listen carefully. And the series of messages is going to help you, and it's going to help me, how to begin to love Jesus with all of our hearts. You see, the root cause for Christian boredom is this. Most Christians don't know how to love Jesus. Some of you might say, wait a minute, Michael. Just wait a minute. Wait a minute. You're not talking to me. I love Jesus because I love Jesus because I study the Bible regularly. I have excellent Bible knowledge. As a matter of fact, I'm a stickler for accurate biblical interpretation. You don't understand. I defend biblical doctrine. I memorized large portions of the Scripture. What do you mean I don't know how to love Jesus? Well, all these things are wonderful. Don't stop. Don't stop. Others might say to me, you don't understand, Michael. I'm into the deeper life teaching. I'm into the changed life teaching. I'm into the victorious life teaching. I'm into the upward call teaching. I'm into the higher goals teaching. Fine. But to so many Christians, these means to loving Christ have become ends in themselves. And that's the problem. And that's the problem that we are facing today in the Church of Jesus Christ. Hear me right. Head knowledge of the Bible must never be your goal. Healing of your memories of the past must never be your goal. Your goal and my goal must be, how do I love Jesus Christ with all of my heart? How do I love Him deeply? How do I love Him fully? How do I love Him intimately? How do I love Him uniquely? And when you grow in your love for Christ, all the other things are going to fall in place. And you don't have to go running around this person or this training or this teaching or this seminar or this conference. It all begins by knowing how to love the Lord Jesus Christ. Here's a text I want to give you. I want you to drink from it so deeply throughout this series of messages. And here it is. It's Philippians chapter 3, verse 8. Because here's what the Apostle Paul said. I regard everything as loss because of the surpassing value of knowing Christ Jesus, my Lord. You'll spend the rest of your life unpacking this one verse, and you'll never finish it. Until you come to the point in your life where you're being able to say to the Lord, Lord, everything. Now, underline everything. I mean everything. My job, my money, my possessions, and yes, even my life is a loss when I put it side by side to knowing and loving the Lord Jesus Christ. Until you do that, you have not come to the point of beginning to love the Lord Jesus with all your being. Let me ask you a question. What is the dearest thing? What is the most precious thing to you? For me, let me make a confession only to help you as you begin your walk in love with loving Jesus. For a long period of time, the most important thing for me, even my family doesn't know this, the most important goal in my life was to earn a doctorate in philosophy from a prestigious university. Some of you think, this is stupid. I agree with you. But listen to me. That was the driving goal of my life. Not any old doctorate, not a doctorate in ministry, not a doctorate of this and a doctorate. It was a doctorate of philosophy, a PhD. You say, well, Michael, Is your doctorate worthless? Well, not really, no. But I'm going to tell you right now, as I'm standing before God and before you, if I compare it with Christ and His love for me and my love for Him, it's a piece of rubbish. I'll toss it out. Listen, I want you to hear me right. Those of you who are involved in ministry and teaching and serving in any way, I want you to listen to me. And those pastors who are watching by television, I want you to listen to me, because this is a temptation and we don't talk about it. Many of us who are involved in serving and in ministering, whatever it may be, we are vulnerable to the temptation of confusing the ministry with loving Jesus. We really are. I am absolutely convinced in my heart right now that the Lord cares more for the minister than He cares for the ministry. He can raise children out of the rocks for Abraham. So if you're in love with teaching, if you're in love with serving in any way, if you're in love with preaching, if you're in love with this or that ministry, more than you love the Lord Jesus Christ, you need to stop and ask yourself the question, do I love Christ more or do I love the ministry more? Now, beloved, that's my struggle. That's my temptation. And when you begin the journey of loving the Lord Jesus Christ intimately, when you begin to compare the permanence of His love and the permanence of who He is with the fleeting of other things, including ministry, when you begin to compare His constant refreshing us with how fast other things become so stale and so old, when you begin to do that, you have begun to understand and on the journey of loving Jesus with all your being. Loving Christ has to begin with a deep yearning to know, to experience, and to love Him more than anything else on the face of the earth. Listen to Paul's deepest prayer for the Ephesians. He said in Ephesians chapter 3, verse 18, that he said, I'm praying that you might comprehend the full breadth and length and height and depth of the love of Christ. Until you come to the point of saying, Lord, my love for you is pathetic. Lord, my knowledge of you is so superficial. Lord, my apprehension of you is shallow. Lord, my time with you is one-sided. Lord, my desire for you is merely to give me what I want. Lord, my encounter with you is limited to when I need you. Lord, I have not loved you anywhere near the way you have loved me. Until you come to that point in your life, you cannot begin on the road of loving Christ with all your being. Until and unless you become dissatisfied, yes, you heard me right, until and unless you become dissatisfied with your current condition of not loving Him with all of your being, you have not yet begun the journey of intimately loving the Lord Jesus. If I know anything about the Lord, reading in the 4 Gospels, I know that He longs to nourish our minds with His truth. I know that He longs to raise our imagination to new heights through His beauty. I know that He longs for our hearts to apprehend His love. He longs for us to surrender our wills to His purpose. He longs for us to allow His holiness to challenge the way we conduct business. But until you come to that point of saying, Lord, I am truly dissatisfied with where I am, spiritual boredom will continue to shadow you. And I don't care, you could be preaching to millions of people. I am telling you from my heart. One of the things the Lord does when I'm bringing you a message like this, He has a way of dealing with the minister before He blesses the ministry. And while I'm publicly broken before you, I'm rejoicing because the Lord had begun me on a journey that I would have never understood any other way except of brokenness. Because, my beloved friends, I want to tell you, I told you before, this is the most important series of messages I've ever preached. And my prayer for you, as I love you dearly, is my prayer for me, is that as of this day, we begin the journey of loving Christ with all of our being. The permanent cure for spiritual boredom is not another seminar, it's not another conference, it's not another retreat. They will last only for a short period of time. Mountaintop experiences are great, but as soon you've got to get back to the valley. The cure for spiritual boredom is not the newest book on the deeper life. That's temporary. The cure for spiritual boredom is not hear more preaching and more teaching, as much as I love preaching and as much as I love teaching. The cure for spiritual boredom is not more busy activities for the sake of being busy. The cure for spiritual boredom is not more pop psychology that's got baptized as some biblical truth. The cure for spiritual boredom is not more counseling or more this or more that. The cure for spiritual boredom is not any of these things that mask our deepest longing and our deepest needs. Why? Because, my beloved friends, I want to tell you, our deepest longing is to know and love Jesus. Your deepest longing and my deepest longing, whether we know it and whether we can even articulate it or not, is to begin to apprehend the depth, the width, the breadth, and the height of the love of Christ. Then to begin to learn how to love Him back in the same way that He loved us. But it all has to begin with dissatisfaction. Dissatisfaction. Write this word down, dissatisfaction. That's where it all has to begin. Hear me right, because I believe with all my heart that complacency and smugness is the number one enemy to loving Christ. If you say, well, I feel good about myself, I'm doing fine, I go to church and I read the Bible and I'm all right, now I'll tell you something. You're not going to even begin in the journey of loving the Lord Jesus Christ. And I cannot begin to think about loving the Lord without going back to Abraham. Of all the biblical characters, he absolutely challenges me the most. You see, loving Jesus begins with dissatisfaction with where you are. But loving Jesus begins also with a decision of the will to obey Him no matter what. And here's what God said to Abraham. Abraham, leave everything. Now dwell here with me for a minute, okay? Everything? Now I want to tell you something. Abraham probably, in our day, would be equivalent to the CEO of Microsoft or one of the large companies. He was the CEO of a major corporation. He was a man of extensive holdings. He was the most important man in that whole area of the world. And then he said, God, what are you talking about? Everything? Yep, everything. Lord, did I hear that word right? Is it everything? Yeah, you heard me right. It is everything. You mean all of this, Lord? I mean, you mean everything? Yes, I do mean everything. But that's not all. He said, everybody. Leave everybody. Leave everybody, Lord. Do you understand? I'm the patriarch of this area. I'm the most important person here. A lot of people dependent on me. It's a livelihood, Lord. Leave everything and everybody. But that's not all. He said to him, he said, I'm going to lead you to uncertain future. Uncertain future. Leave all of this to an uncertain future. God said, yep. But I want you to think of something else. Abraham lived 2,000 years before Christ. That means he did not have a Bible. He did not have a Bible. He did not have 2,000 years of history of knowing that Jesus gave his all for him. That was 2,000 years before Christ died for him. Abraham did not have a pastor. He did not have a church. He did not have a book that is written by Dr. Smellfungus to tell him how to obey God. I mean, can we... Listen, I'm an author and I love you to read my books. But if my books don't lead you to loving Christ, throw them away. Abraham did not have Christian friends that can counsel with him, that can pray with him. I told you it's a challenge. If you focus on it just for a little bit, I mean, it's mind-boggling. In fact, Abraham really did not know a great deal about God. Only what was transmitted through his ancestors, that God created Adam and Eve, his ancestors, and that God has a plan for history. Just verbal, oral tradition that was passing from generation to generation. The Bible said Abraham trusted God and obeyed God. Oh, my friend, that's real love. That's real love. You want to tell me how much you love Jesus? Tell me how much you're obeying Jesus. For every one of us, the one thing that you must be willing to do if you really want to love Christ is to be willing to give up everything. Now, let me stop you here for a minute. I said, you notice I said willing to give up everything, because in reality, God doesn't want anything you have. He gave you everything you've got. And He can take it away if He wants to. He's God, remember? You cannot begin to love the Lord Jesus Christ without first a willingness to fully obeying Him. Hear me right, I'm getting ready to close. That will require, it will require that you forsake that sin or sins that you've been nursing for so long. That will require the forsaking of the false concept of God that you have been holding onto. That will require your willingness to give up your fears, your anxieties, your worries, your insecurities. You must be willing to say, nothing. Nothing is nothing. Means nothing. Has no other interpretation except nothing. Nothing would I withhold from you. When you get to that point, then you can be sure that you have begun your journey of loving Jesus with all of your being.
If you'd like to learn how to know God in a personal way, ask for the booklet, Finding the Joy You've Always Wanted. It will tell you of